Bloody hell.
swore the light orb.
Right, fuck it. Let's get going then. I want to put several light years between me and this sorry excuse for a space station before our pork and beans come through the heat.
And just like that, as one often finds given the random chaos of the multiverse, Glorfindel's words brought into being the actualization of their meaning, which is to say, the microwave behind the bar, having survived the destructive exploits of the mercenaries long enough to carry out its one final task, tinged. Jahanara and Glorfindel, their shadows barely over the threshold of the airlock, heard the ting and shuddered. "Oh shit," said Jahanara.
Oh shit,
said Glorfindel.
Yeah, doggy, dinner is served,
said Clarence the barkeep, slinging 2 steaming bowls of greying matter through the air towards their intended masticators. As both portions of pork and beans hit Glorfindel, the extraneously conscious light orb, squarely in the sphere, covering them for what felt like the 100th time that day in sticky, stinking stuff, the escaping freelancers heard the dying words of Clarence as the robot barkeep crumpled to the floor in a mess of distressed wiring and shredded metal.
Tell my son, little Clary Jr., tell him I love them. And to my wife, tell her.
But the rest was lost in an unintelligible sequence of ones and zeros. As Clarence's cry carried across the lobby, a strange sequence of events took place, ending, unfortunately for it, with the brief resurrection and swift second death of the pale blue dot's resident parking valley, the small green blob. Hearing Clarence's message dissolve into binary, the last surviving members of an anarcho-punk band, the Legionnaires of Sin, pricked their ears. As it happened, one of the surviving members, Johnny the Mutant Albatross, was the very same member who had written their computer-friendly song I Want to 01000110U, and was therefore quite fluent in binary. And, given as it was that Clarence's last garbled message to his wife was identical to the graphic title of that song, Johnny the Mutant Albatross not unsurprisingly misinterpreted it as a call for an encore. Never knowingly having disappointed his crowd, the large oboe-playing bird rallied his band for, as he would have put it, one mere tune. Time was now working again at normal speed, which, to be sure, is not a scientifically accurate sentence, but is the sentence you'll just have to put up with. And so, to the cacophonous opening chords of I Want to 01000110U, there came a bellow of rage. It came not, as Jahanara had hoped, from the lungs of the band's lead singer, but instead from a broiling mass of hissing steam and ominously glowing fire, bubbling in a pool over in the opposite corner of the room. The bellow was a response, the freelancers guessed, to the simultaneously instantaneous deaths of the lava monster's mercenary companions, who upon the ting of the microwave had all either been blown apart by their own trigger fingers, were dissolved from the inside out, or had finally collapsed due to loss of blood from stab or thump wounds inflicted some time before, relatively speaking of course. As the fiery being collected itself and rose to a new, enormous height, the igneous rock of its makeup flaring with alarming veins of orange and red, Jahanara turned to Glorfindel. "I thought you'd pissed on that guy."
I did,
protested the light orb.
He sizzled right out.
Jesus. Yeah, well, he's back again.
Who the hell is this Jesus?
What? Oh, I'm just practicing my Earth speak. Sorry. Look, we better go. Back in the office of the Pale Blue Dot's resident parking valley, the small green blob was busy peeling itself from the walls. A few moments ago, the blink of a light on its control panel had revived the blob's faculties of muscle memory. Apparently, after serving the pale blue dot's customers for the best part of 4.6 million years, even the heat of its murderer's quasar blaster could not curtail its ingrained impulse to work.
Pathetic,
it thought, as a part of it squidged along the dashboard toward the flashing light. After the light had flashed twice more, thanks to the impatience of some selfish sod on the inside, part of the small green blob finally managed to press the door release. "So, Mr. Blob," it imagined the host of its favourite talk show, Close Encounters of the Death Kind, saying, "What brought you back?" It'd reply,
"My commitment to serving customers." "Mother of pearl,"
cursed the small green blob.
"You really are pathetic, you know that."
Awkwardly sandwiching the last of itself together and smelling the faintest hint of roasted garlic in the air, the small green blob trudged solemnly to the airlock. On the other side of the door, Jahanara Khan and Glorfindel, the extraneously conscious light orb, pressed themselves. At the far end of the corridor, the Legionnaires of Sin were just cracking into the chorus of their encore, filling the whole place with the frantic energy of computational code, a heady mix of orchestral crescendos and accidental harmony, and the thrum of a double bass approaching the speed of sound. Glorfindel exhibited a veritable light show of panicked colour, and Jahanara's head spun against the noise. But it was not the musical atrocities of the band's encore which so occupied their attentions, for stomping into the airlock tunnel of the pale blue dot as the doors to the bar closed behind it was the still very much living, still very much breathing lava monster. It may have lost its thought gun, but on it came nonetheless, pounding molten fist into molten palm and grinning with teeth as white as ash. It spoke then, and as it spoke, fire spilled from its mouth, and the air around it burned, the oxygen of the airlock growing thin.
"Looks like it's the end of the road for you,"
said the monster, with a voice the timbre of magma. And against the opposite door, which should have led to the landing pad and to a dwindling promise of safety, Jahanara and Glorfindel quailed.
"Bloody stupid, egotistical, self-centered, rich, privileged arseholes,"
grumbled the small green blob as it rolled painfully over to the release button on the pad by the airlock.
"I really ought to quit, you know. This whole being murdered malarkey is the final straw. I swear it. It'll be the opening argument in my resignation letter, and make no mistake."
From the other side of the door, the small green blob could hear a banging. Pressing itself to the metal, it heard a muffled shout.
"Impatient bastards,"
it squealed. But even as it said so, its blob was pressing down on the big red button of the control panel, carrying out its duty with the same unwavering dedication which had seen it awarded Employee of the Month every month for the past 4.6 million years. As the door onto the launch pad slid open, Jahanara Khan and Glorfindel, the extraneously conscious light orb, spilled out backwards. They gasped for air, found none, remembered at last to attach their outer space breathomakers, and gasped again. The small green blob, witnessing this undignified disembarkation of the station, sighed.
"One too many Bathbury daiquiris, I presume,"
it scoffed, shaking its blob.
"I don't suppose you've remembered your valet ticket then?"
"Close the..." breathed Jahanara. Close the bloody door." The insectoid was pointing rather nervously at the open airlock. The small green blob frowned.
"You know what?"
it said, the full force of 4.6 million years worth of job dissatisfaction choosing this exact moment to bubble over.
No, I will not. In fact, why don't you close it yourself?
It should at this point be noted that blobs, whether small and green or large and pink, were not known for passionate speeches.
I've literally been roasted today. Bloody miracle I survived. Just got myself back together, and now you're shouting orders at me. No! Close the bloody door, your bloody self.
Then, satisfied with having unleashed all hell on its two unruly customers, and reconsidering its decision to quit the dot, having now blown off the steam of so many millions of years, the small green blob sat down on the edge of the launch pad and had a little smile to itself. 10 feet away, and approaching fast, the lava monster loomed. Close enough now that the immense heat emanating from its body was beginning to blister Jahanara's exposed skin, and perhaps even more frighteningly, to evaporate the moisture in Glorfindel's orb, dissipating the clouds which were their very being. Glorf croaked weakly.
If ever there was a time to use that thing again, it would probably be now.
The lava monster was 8 feet away. Jahanara unzipped her bum bag and searched with withering fingers for the place from which she'd peeled a portion of the brainiac before. If you've ever struggled to locate the start of a roll of sellotape, in harsh lighting with sweaty fingers and under the immense stress that your impending death tends to induce, with only the hope of survival resting in you locating said start of the sellotape roll, then you'll know something of how Jahanara felt in the agonizing seconds it took her to find the right notch on her stolen brainiac. Presently, the monster was 5 feet away, and Jahanara could feel the edges of her wings begin to crisp. With a sudden, aha! She located the napped edge of the brainiac and pulled. Away came a sliver of intelligence about the length of a human finger. The monster was just 3 feet away. Glorfindel, rolling like an errant marble toward the edge of the landing pad, beyond which was an infinite drop into deepest space, went But far from joining in their anguish, Jahanara had a plan. The freelancer picked herself up and, mustering all the energy she could into those frail and damaged wings, flew to the side of the small green blob. Oblivious to all but its own ego, the blob did not see her coming. Jahanara scooped up the blob in her arms and lifted it into the air, thankful for its surprising lightness.
What are you
The blob protested. You said you were roasted earlier, right? Asked Jahanara.
Oh, blimey. Strike me down. You listened, did you? First time for everything, I suppose.
Listen, commanded Jahanara. The monster was closing on her, and Glorfindel, their life mists rapidly ebbing, rolled ever closer to the abyss. Look, you were roasted, but you survived, yes? The small green blob grumbled. What?
Yes, I said yes, all right, bloody hell. And who's that?
It added, spying the inordinately obvious lava monster for the first time. So you're impervious to fire, to heat, yeah? Continued Khan, ignoring its question.
Well,
replied the small green blob, puffing out its small green chest.
yes, I guess you could say I am.
It pouted.
But I don't see how that's...
And then the blob stopped, because suddenly it did see how that might just be relevant. Jahanara, roaring a war cry to end all war cries, flapped her wings and rose above the erupting head of her volcanic foe. With all her might, she began tossing the small green blob up above her, catching it on an upraised fist, spinning, tossing, and spinning again. You've seen a pizza base being made, right? Okay, so you get the picture. Presently, as the mass of the small green blob spread out, like molecules in a centrifuge, and it became a blobby blanket of pale, translucent green, Jahanara darted suddenly out of its way. She crashed to the deck of the space station, right in time to catch her friend Glorfindel, the extraneously conscious light orb, as they reached the edge of the landing pad, and thus saving them from losing themselves to the eternal void. Jahanara looked over toward the airlock, just in time to see her plan working. The frisbee, which had once called itself the small green blob, came spinning down with such force and with such surface area that it completely drowned the body of the lava monster in sticky, greenish gloop. As the two freelancers watched on, blob and lava thing fused together, the fires of the monster turning black and smoky, extinguished at the last. And the small green blob, who had boasted so proudly in its final moments of its imperviousness to fire, was proved to be not entirely impervious. Thus, as blob and beast both met their ends, into the atmosphere of the cosmos was released the scintillating scent of garlic bread.
"Blimey," said Jahanara. "He doesn't half smell good."
Then, temporarily remembering the concept of sympathy, added, "Thanks, old boy." She turned to Glorfindel, their orbs slowly refilling with cloud and mist and fog, all tinted with golden relief. "Glorf, my gal," beamed Jahanara. "Fancy an Italian?" She gestured toward the faintest of blue specks out in space. "Still a few left of them down there, or so I've heard, and they're supposed to be darn good eating. Reckon I owe you one." The end. I turned to my class, their eager eyes wide and bulging from heads not yet fully grown, their tentacles relaxed, suckers unsuctioning from table legs and pencil cases. I noticed, but did not draw attention to, several small puddles of ink on the floor. It seemed that more than one of my pupils had been too absorbed in my story to ask for the toilet pass. Another afternoon spent mopping up then, I thought.
But miss,
chirped up a cephalopod in the front row, her beak clacking excitedly.
What happened next?
Is that an impression of poor Clarence the bartender? I teased, much to the amusement of the other children. The girl folded 4 of her tentacles across herself, unimpressed. "Well," I began, "the rest is, in a word, history. Our glorious Saviour came here, liberated us from the shackles of ignorance with the gift of the mighty Brainiac, and we, my dear lass, were born."
And Glorfy?
chimed in a boy at the back of the class, in an unusual bout of auditory confidence. "Ah, well, now Glorfindel..." But I was interrupted by the lunch bell. To my delighted surprise, the children moaned loudly. "Well, children, it seems that story will just have to wait. Now, off to the feeding pool with you. I hear scallops are on the menu today." Now they whooped, and I smiled. "Go on, off you swim. Oh, and, boys and girls and all those in between, you won't forget who to thank for the food today, will you?"
No, Mrs. Crimpus,
came the reply.
course not. Not after that story.
And so, off my children went, down the current toward their lunch, and as they went they sang, and hearing it I smiled, for I think she would be proud of how I told her story, and in the canteen the children would say grace and thank her for their meal. She, our supreme leader, Jahanara Khan.